4 delegations. Those are also still both about the report from the future vision report and the farmer market. So those are on the agenda. And now there are no more changes. But all those in favor, so vote in favor of the agenda. Myself, Councillor Beattie, need answers from Selena and Anne in favor of the agenda.
Yes, I
Okay, thank you so much.
the agenda, thank you. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Selena, are you there?
I'm here, I'm just having a hard
Now
time
there are
hearing.
no more changes. Okay, I'll get closer. But all those in favor, just a moment. So I'll talk louder. So.
Maybe Cameron, if you unmute on your WebEx as well.
Need answers from Selena and Anne. I'm worried that'll create feedback in favor of the agenda. Which is
Yes.
No, that's okay. Selena, are you there? Unfortunately, the microphones are not movable either, so that's an issue. And I'll get closer. Just give me 1 second, okay? Selena, I'm louder. So.
Maybe Cameron, if you unmute on your WebEx as well.
I'm worried that'll create feedback. That's an issue. I'll get closer. Just give me 1 second, okay? It's not louder.
Can you turn your microphone on? It shouldn't be, no, not that one, the one on your computer, is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, that's not good. Oh.
That shouldn't feed back, because you're not plugged into that, right?
Sorry, Eric, what are you saying?
So, this is where it's here is the laptop computer. The laptop might be close to this, this is where it projects from.
It's actually, she's in the sky.
But I think you want to
Are any of
you
these
can also
on?
hear it from here, you can change the
Let's
volume.
check. And
There's no red lights.
Yeah, we're all off.
All right, I'm trying to
turn
turn
you
this,
Yeah, no, you are.
but it's awful.
That's not gonna work, not gonna work, not.
What if Bill mutes while you speak and then you mute while Bill speaks?
I'm sorry, is Bill not muted?
I don't know. Maybe just go- Okay, I'm muted.
Right now. Is that helping?
Is that helping anyway?
Oh.
Yeah, that's how.
What about now, Smitty? Can you hear me okay? Or is it very faint still? That's the issue. We need you for quorum, so.
Now both are muted.
Why don't you guys first come back?
I'd like to put a motion on the floor in regards to this. We go through this every single week, every single month. Can we ask that members attend meetings in person so we can get ahead with this? You know, it's inconvenient for us to.
Both are still muted for me.
I'll be back. I'm happy.
Point her to the screen. She can hear us.
Camera instead of pro as to the concept operator.
Very serious.
We don't show up. We have no citizen. No citizen. I'm coming to this chair. Two members that were real. They're not here.
The person who's on the phone we were trying to do is actually is not his presence in the city for over the year. Association.
And she would.
Sorry, everyone, we'll get back to this as soon as we can.
So I talked to the manager
Say something.
market
Hey, Selena.
I complimented her because I had a great time
How are you?
because
I'm wondering.
and found out some info from their consultants. And
On the presentation that's on the slide.
no one was
So
allowed
let us
to
know
check
if you
over.
can see the slide, okay?
They would stay. And then long time, but it was hopping yesterday. I had to go back to every single one. They were like, I couldn't get, I don't know how to stuff with this. It's like we got on Saturday.
Cindy, the better thing to do is have her go back and
I just stopped. I wanted to take a bus to us.
Oh, sorry.
as long as I can.
This is the advance for
So is she,
this
did she
month.
leave, did she leave
The
that?
10th,
Yeah, I said,
24.
If you go back into WebEx and just leave yourself there and follow along in WebEx, so you can see presentation, that'll work fine. But you can stay here so I can hear you. I just need to hear you, and I can repeat what you say on the microphone, okay?
They've got a kitchen upstairs. They've got a theater, so children's children's theater upstairs. They've got
I'm
a
gonna
upstairs.
keep yourself here and you want to speak also.
Outside. You've got a farmer's market that's
Otherwise,
outside
can you
all
hear me
year
stuff?
round.
She's looking at somebody else.
They've got
Perfect.
seating,
Okay, great.
I believe.
So I'm gonna get out of WebEx personally. You, first you do a show off back in WebEx.
She's all back in the.
Yeah, so you're logging back in WebEx, so you can presentations there. Great, we found an interim solution, thanks to Cindy, so hooray. And yes, and in terms of having a motion, I'm going to send an email after about this, because I think we've reached the point where our technical difficulties
May I
are,
redo my motion?
as long as it's that we get the technical support we need, yes.
I would like to suggest that we troubleshoot all of this, because I think it's unfair to us who turn up at the meetings on time. There's also an issue with people not turning up, not sending correspondence to say, I will be absent. So there's really no quorum or, the point is, this is a serious time for the Hamilton Farmers Market. Those people who were appointed to the board, they know the technical difficulties we have, and I would like to move a serious motion that correspondence go out to all vendor board members requesting that they either come to the meeting in person, on time, as much as possible, and communicate. Because we all have something coming up, we're human beings, but I think it is disrespectful that we do not know what is going on. I need a motion. I'm presenting a motion through the chair that correspondence go out, streamlining the responsibilities of vendor board members. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for Ann's motion?
Through the chair, I would like to dispute that motion.
You can't dispute it until it's on the table. There's no seconder at this time, so it's not on the table.
Through the chair?
But it's not on the table, there's no seconder yet, so there's no conversation, I'm just waiting for a moment. I think Councillor Beatty is collecting his thoughts.
Well, I'm trying to figure out how I can move this forward, recognizing
Yeah, so
the
if I
same
can,
thing as usual.
if I could just end, the issue is that we should have the technical support here for when there's a situation where somebody can't be here. The city has a policy generally, very generally, that people can come to meetings remotely. So we can't change that policy here no matter
That
what.
people can,
Come to meetings remotely. That's just a policy we have. But what seems to happen, by the way, we were in this room today for 7.5 hours, and it worked perfectly. So I think the gap is that we're not getting the support we need for our meetings in here. That's the issue. Because I don't think we can supersede the city's rule that people can come virtually, and that's my feeling on it. It's not a feeling, it's just a rule. I'm gonna write an email and asking them to make sure that this is all set up in advance, because I think we've had enough trial and error trying to figure it out. That's the best I can do. Rather than trying to rewrite a city policy in this meeting. So we didn't vote on the agenda being approved, or we did. Myself and Jeff voted, but Selena, you didn't vote on it. Are you in favor of the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, Selena's in favor, so that carries. Before we carry on the agenda, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of conflicts of interest for today's meeting? Not seeing any. Number 3 on it is the meeting minutes from our May 1st Hamilton Farmers Market Board meeting. So I'll need a mover and seconder for those minutes. I'll move by Councillor Beatty. Can I have someone second the minutes be moved? I'm happy to second them. Any discussion on these minutes? Not seeing discussion on the minutes, so all those in favor of approving the minutes from our May 1st meeting? Show of hands is totally fine. Yep. Selena?
Yep.
Okay, great. So that carries unanimously. On to item 4. So board communication received or sent since the prior board meeting. There was an email received from the legislative coordinator for the city of Hamilton on May 10th, 2023. And so just a very brief summary of that. The email was sent that, in short, City Council sent the report from, with respect to the vision for the market, to the Hamilton Farmers Market for us to review that report, review the report from Planning and Economic Development, which is report number PED 23049, and to provide feedback or recommendations to City Council in aid of its deliberations. pretty sure that pretty much sums it up. Any questions about what City Council's asking us to do? There was no timeline attached to that, by the way, but they just asked that we do so. And I may suggest that depending on how today's meeting goes, we may be able to provide some feedback now, some later, I'm not sure, so I'm just flagging that right up front. We're on to item 5. These are delegations, there's 4. Christy Van Beek from the Apothecary Kitchen, Jeffrey Pichel from the Market Bakery, Eric Miller, and Darren Krieger are the other 2 that I had on a piece of paper here. Sorry if I don't have your affiliations written down, but you can tell us when you delegate. And so we're going to have somebody move and second that we approve the delegations for today's meeting. Okay, so moved by Councilor Beattie, I'll second that. Any discussion about the delegations for today's meeting? They're all to speak to the report. Not seeing any. All those in favor of approving today's delegations? Show of hands. Selena? Yeah. Okay, that carries. And we will have the delegations. Everyone gets 5 minutes each. I'll start in the order in which Leader Burris has provided them to me. And we'll start with Christy Van Beek. And the way it'll go is Christy will have 5 minutes to delegate. Members of the board will then be able to ask any questions they may have. We'll receive Christy's delegation, and then at the end, if there are any questions for us as staff or motions to make, we can do so. Since they're all thematically on a similar or same topic, we may wait to the end to make any motions of all the delegations. I'll leave that to you individually as you see fit. So go ahead, Christy, you have 5 minutes, and thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Cameron, and thank you to the board for having me today. In the book, Start With Why, Simon Sinek methodically lays out the reasons that the most successful organizations put their mission, their why, at the forefront of every major decision. They allow their clear mission and purpose to drive their decisions, to answer key questions, and to guide everything they do. I was unable to find a mission statement for the Hamilton Farmers Market on our website. I was able to find one which has been proposed for adoption in the long-awaited consultant's report, which reads, to provide high-quality, cost-conscious public services that contribute to a healthy, safe, and prosperous community in a sustainable manner. I'm here today to ask this board to swiftly make changes that allow us to better serve our community by changing our hours of operation. When I chose to start my new business at the Hamilton Farmers Market in the summer of 2021, I thought that the market was full of promise. I was assured that the market was operating temporarily on COVID hours as the result of the then raging pandemic. In the almost 2 years since, while virtually every other organization has returned to business as usual, we continue to operate on a reduced 29-hour per week schedule, though our license agreements show that we're open 40 hours a week. This represents a 27.5% shortfall in the market's commitment to its vendors. It represents a loss of 11 hours per week, 44 hours per month, 572 hours per year, and 924 hours lost in the 21 months that I've operated my business at this market. As a result, my business has suffered and continues to suffer immeasurable revenue losses. Month after month, I continue to go into debt while trying to launch a new business. It makes it very difficult to see any future here. I ask this board who will compensate me for lost revenues, and when will I be remunerated for my 27.5% overpayment of my stallholder charges? I ask this board, what's our why? Are we here to cater to the preferences of the majority of 50 vendors? Or are we here to meet the needs of our greater community of 550,000 individuals? According to a study by the University of Waterloo, More than 2/3 of individuals work what are considered regular daytime hours, 9 to 5. The majority of our hours occur during the hours of 9 to 4. That means that our hours of operation today exclude 2/3 of the working population most of the time that we are open. These are the very individuals who could help me possibly pay my bills. The kind members of our community who wish to support small businesses by coming to this market and opening their wallets. Every time they try to open the door and they find those doors locked, that could be the very last time they ever try. While we're asking why, I have another curious why question. Why, after years of market decline and mismanagement, does this market continue to employ an apathetic manager who's resistant to change? After years of complaints and negative feedback, we see no meaningful change, only further decline. When a sports team fails to deliver, the GM gets cut. Not here. It feels almost like a deliberate ploy to undermine the success of this market so that the city can possibly advance an agenda to relocate the market and its remaining vendors. When will we see the GM held accountable to the market's success or lack thereof? I believe that once this board decides why this market exists, the questions of market hours and management will become easy ones to answer. Thank you.
Any questions for the delegate? Don't get up if there's any questions. Any questions for the delegate? Aside from me?
I have a question.
Yes, Linda, go ahead, I'll read it out once you've said it.
Thank you. I'm wondering if Christy is delegating or proposing that we be open longer hours or back to the original hours.
The question was whether or not you were, what specifically you're proposing with respect to the hours?
That's a good question. I'd be happy to have more hours in general. If you're asking what my preferred hours would be, I would say that we should be open probably, number one, taking into consideration that people's behavior have changed following the pandemic. A lot of people didn't have to get up early for months and months and months. So having for like 7 a.m. market hours probably doesn't make sense. We don't see the market typically busy in the morning. And if I had my dream, I would say my dream would be to have the market open either 9 to 7 or 10 to 8, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's not as though we have a ton of farmers who need a day off in the middle to harvest their crops anymore. Therefore, having a day off in the middle of the week just means that our product is going bad, and that constitutes an additional loss for any vendors that have perishable goods.
Thanks, Christy. Did you have any follow-up for that? Or any other questions, Linda?
No, I agree with Christy completely on that part.
Okay, so just she agrees with you, okay? I had a couple questions. So I wanted to turn back to the report and ask, it mentions the word hours 27 times in this report. And so I wanted to ask you, it doesn't give an answer though, like it doesn't say, okay, these are what the hours should be. They should be these specific hours, and as you know, as all of us know, we've had many recommendations about different kinds of hours. One of the suggestions in here is explore co-locating tenants in zoned areas to allow for varied hours and merchandising. The other suggestion that has been made is go back to pre-COVID hours, right? A third suggestion is to try to find a way to accommodate as many people as possible by coming up with some kind of hours that work for such and such and so and so. So of those possible scenarios, because those are the three kind of scenarios they present in the report, and frankly, that we've reviewed here and reviewed with vendors, like, what do you think should be the next step?
It's a really interesting question. Personally, I think there's a reason that superstores, giant retailers like Walmart, Loblaws, and so on have been successful. It's because they've become a one-stop shop. Even Shoppers Drug Mart has added grocery to a pharmacy. I don't personally believe that delineating the market and having different hours for different types of vendors is the right move. However, I would support any move to improve what we have now, if that's what's required. However, I think if people are making the trek downtown, braving the conditions of coming downtown, searching for parking, making their way to the market, they should have an optimized experience being able to do all of their shopping in one go. And I think that that would look like having all of the vendors there at the same time.
Thanks. My second question is right now, and you know this because it's been a policy from before I was starting on this board, that there was at some point a policy saying, look, if you miss a market day or market hours or those kinds of things, that there's a penalties attached to that. Do you think that's required to sort of make things operate at the market, is to have a penalty and as a part of this hours program?
Yes, I do. I don't think that vendors should just be allowed to close up for the day and relocate. However, I do understand why vendors are doing that right now. I mean, on Saturday, I attended 2 markets. I made more money in 3 hours at a tiny market than I did in an 8-hour day at the Hamilton Farmers Market. We have to be asking some really serious why questions to understand why that's happening and why no one's coming to shop here anymore. And I think it's because they continually come and found the doors locked or found that they're having a less than desirable experience at our market. Our market's not exciting, it's not booming, it's not hopping, it's not full. It's not full of vendors. I've seen other market managers of other markets proactively seeking vendors and seeking ways to improve their markets and keep them exciting and fruitful. And I just don't see that here. It's disappointing, to say the very least.
Thanks for your feedback. Last question for me is, the location of the market is an essential part of the discussion that's going on right now in terms of the future of the market. And obviously that's linked to every other change the market's going to make. So if a bunch of changes get made at the market and then the market moves, do you still think that's a good outcome? Meaning, let's say the hours change, let's say a bunch of things change to improve the market and the outlook is good. But then, and this is just a FYI, they decide they're going to move the bridge between the city center and across the road there during the deconstruction of the city center, which will be happening this year. And so they do that obstructs the entire location. We'll say, you know what, the location we need to move. I understand your position, which is you think these things are separate issues. Get on with the situation we have now and make a separate situation about that later. Is that my understanding of what you're saying? Because from my perspective, they overlap a little bit, but I think what you're saying is, look, like the situation we have right now is what it is. Let's get that situation as optimal as possible and deal with the next things afterwards. Could you comment on that?
Are you speaking of a temporary relocation or a permanent relocation?
I'm not speaking of either. I'm just saying, the issue of relocation is on the table, right? So that's why I'm asking.
The only comment I have on the topic of relocation is if the market will be relocated, whether it's temporarily or permanently. I can only speak for myself, but I imagine other vendors feel the same given the state of the market at this time. I'll only be moving once, and it'll be out to a more desirable location, because for $25 per square foot, I can get a much better location where I can make my own hours, play my own music, and make it my own. Whereas here, as an entrepreneur, I have very little control over a lot of important variables. And I think we're paying far too high of rent to only be operating 29 hours per week.
Thank you so much for the questions and for your delegation. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Not seeing other questions for this delegate, so we'll receive all delegations at the end and save comments for them. Next on our list for delegations, and we'll stick to questions of delegates at the end, is Jeffrey Pachel from the Market Bakery. So whenever you're ready, you've got 5 minutes.
Just press this button.
Yeah, the one with the mouse.
There we go. I just want to say, my name is Jeff Michelle. I'm the owner of the Market Bakery. I would like to thank the board, the two chairs, and the members for this opportunity to speak to you. I arrived in the farmer's market, and I'm doing this completely without anything written down, so I'm just going to go with it. And I could be here probably for hours, but and I could go in with all the little ideas and discuss things. But I arrived at the market May last year, so I've only been at the market for a year, and I took my savings. I had a situation with COVID where that I was in a business. I was in the travel business for 12 years until COVID started in March 2020. And after a few months, of course, that ended. We completely shut down. And at the end of the summer, we closed down the business. And then in the fall, I said to myself, I've got to do something. I don't want to work at, at a retail location. I had to make a decision on what I was going to do with my life. So I basically decided to go ahead and start a spice business. So I started a spice business in the fall of 2020. Opened it in December of that year, and went ahead and worked that out for almost, it was about a year and a half until I went ahead and I looked at, matter of fact, that Christmas, 2021 Christmas, I went ahead and I went to the market. And at that point, I'd been in Hamilton for 5 years, but I really didn't know about the market. And that's pretty much what I would, if I think about the market, I say to myself, the one thing that I always hear from customers is, oh my goodness, there's this market here. Oh my goodness, I'll ask them when they come here last, and they'll say, oh, I haven't been here, I've never been here. Like, are you from Hamilton? Yes. Okay. Or 25 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. That's the comment I'll always ask my customers, when you last came to the market. Anyways, I decided that Christmas to go ahead, and I had a little cart at the market there, and it was exciting. Went there for a couple weekends and did well. So I decided that spring, the following spring, which was last year, May of 2022, decided to go ahead and approach the market. And I'm a foodie. I was excited. I was in Toronto for 28 years. I've traveled the world, went to dozens of, many markets all over the world, Barcelona, Hong Kong, South Africa, it doesn't matter, and here in Canada, whether it was Toronto or Ottawa, I was excited, and I had my savings, and I decided to put that into a location at the market. I basically, after a year, I've come to the point now that I no longer can sustain the hours that are there. There isn't enough business for me to continue. Going in on Tuesday for the hours that we do have, which are 4 days a week, only 29 hours a week. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, as of this week, I've decided that I cannot go ahead and open up my business at the market. So I have a spice business that I have to spend the time now on that business, because this business at the market has grown, but it's not going to sustain. I'm not going to be able to go ahead and continue to pour in more money. I went ahead and I know I'm probably reaching my 5 minute, but I'll quickly just go ahead and say, I went ahead and I did a comparison. I gave you a few sheets of information. I basically went ahead and looked at the 4 cities, Ottawa, Toronto, London, and Hamilton. Looked at, there's, things about hours, there's a difference, a shortfall of 27 hours compared to Ottawa's market, compared to compared to our Hamilton farmers market. And unbelievably, if you look at a market like London, I was there yesterday. I had an amazing day in London. I'm not sure of any who has visited that market. Yeah, absolutely unbelievable. I was blown away. And one thing that I wanted to say, because there's a lot that I want to say, but I will say this: I'm embarrassed. I was in shock. I'm embarrassed to even mention to anybody there that I came from Hamilton and that I'm a vendor at the Hamilton Farmers Market. I was just stunned at what I saw there. I was only there I drove out, I had things to do and I drove out. I was only there I got there at 3 o'clock. And they were open till 4. The outside of the market.
You're over your time, so just wrap it up and you can,
Okay, yeah.
no mad rush, but yeah.
Yeah, so basically, I'm just going to say there are markets that we could look at. There's a long history of this market. And I think that when you look at this, there's a lot of things that we can do. There's a long, long list of things that we can do. With regards to the report that came out, there are 3 points with that. With regards to what the existence of this market, where it's going to go. Number 1, do we go ahead and do a gradual renovation and let vendors be there? Number 2, do the vendors go ahead and get relocated like they did 14 years ago, 13 years ago, and go ahead and then redo this market, or do we move the market completely? And those 3 things, which are interesting, the vendors that I've spoken to in that community, just like Christy just went ahead and mentioned a moment ago, do you go ahead, and if you're going to make that move, are you going to go ahead and you're going to make the one move, possibly? Would you go back to, would you move to that location? Will you come back to this particular market? I'm not sure, and if you did ask the vendors and you really talked to the vendors would most likely, a lot of them would say, and this is again generalizing, which I don't want to do, but a lot that I've spoken to would go ahead and say, there are major problems, we don't want to go from here, we don't want to go through the same thing that happened 13 years ago, we've seen this all before, and how do we move forward now? So they're afraid, and I'm not the only business owner that is concerned about hours, about the running of the market, simple things that we could do in the market that we could do immediately within 30 days could be done to beautify the market. And I will just make my last comment. My mother, who is 77 years old, has just bought a condo. She lived in Toronto for 55 years. She went ahead and she just bought a condo just around the corner from the market. She literally wanted to be close to the market. So she bought a condo on Queen Street, and she's moving in August. And she's 77, and she says to me, why isn't the market open on Sunday? And what's up with these hours? And she's 77 years old. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for Jeff at this time? Councillor B has a question.
Thank you, Jeff. Very passionate presentation. I appreciate it. I think you mentioned the 3 options. You mentioned some conversation with the vendors. I'm trying to kind of tease out the overarching theme. Is it that the majority of those that you've spoken to would not support moving, or what was the overarching theme in terms of trying to discern a way forward? I'm interested in that perspective.
I would say that the individuals the vendors that I've spoken to, and it's just I would say a few, they don't want to do the move again. They don't want to go ahead and move. Everything's uncertain, Jeff. That's the thing. Everything, there's so much uncertainty, and dysfunction in the running of this market. It's unreal. If I look at I would personally, what I think, which is possible, is number one. We had this discussion last year we had groups and we had that consulting team come in and we broke up in groups and there was like 40 of us. We all walked around the market and we talked about, hey, what would you do? What could you do? You know, there are simple things. So number one, that's what I would do. Number one is I would go ahead and I would stay there. I would look at that particular farmer's market and say, what can we do to make this work? If I hear another excuse about, oh, it's in the basement, the people, the homeless on the outside, the area this and that, it's like that's all there, it's present. It's not going away tomorrow. We have to deal with what can we do today to make it better. And I would say that if you look at this market, there are ways to phase it in. You could do major moves, like the second floor, make it into a full-on food hall. Go ahead and take everyone that's up there now, bring them downstairs, rework it so they can go downstairs, and take that whole, do phase one, where you completely redo the facility upstairs. For example, I went ahead and started serving food a month ago, and my breakers constantly go, my hydro, I'm doing this when I'm cooking. Like, I can't even cook, you know, because I don't have enough amps. And if it's not that, it's you know, I mean, that's the major thing. There's no ventilation. I can't cook this, I can't cook that, you know, and so you're limited. I mean, Christy and all of us, all the vendors that are food, our hands are cuffed. We can't do anything. We're looking to the market, we're looking to management, the board, and I'd say the city, to say, please, you know, I feel like we're all drowning and no one is going ahead and helping us out. And if you go ahead and look at this market, we don't have to move. Like, I personally don't have to move. I think you just look at it, you sit down, and you truly, we didn't need the report of $100,000 to go ahead and tell us what we already know. If you ask the vendors, they'll all say, if we have another report and spend more money, we've already done this back the last 20 years, you know? And I've gone ahead and spent hours upon hours on researching this market, the location where it was. It's been contested. This market has been contested from the beginning practically, but back in the 1950s, they were doing the same thing that we're doing right now. They went ahead and said, should we shut down? This was like 1950, which is 70 years ago. And they were like, should we shut down? You know, and some said yes, others said no. And look at us, we continue to move forward. Here we are now, we've got this, I think, a great location, because the future is unbelievable. I mean, in the vicinity of, what, a kilometer is probably $2 billion worth of building. Like, it's gonna be unbelievable in 5 years, but right now, we're dying. And I'm not sure if we can, you know, I'm not sure how many, I will say this, there are a lot of vendors that I have talked to that are, I'm the one that's chosen this week to say, I'm shutting down. I'm done. I can't do it. I can't go in it during the week. And it took me last week to walk into the office and say to Bill, you know, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. I can't go ahead and completely go with my savings. I have no savings left. My line of credit is maxed out. You know, everything's maxed out. And I'm like, I can't do this. So I'm like, I have to step back. And I plead to you, the board, to please do something. Do something. Give Bill an opportunity to do something. Somebody do something, or we're gonna, you know, I feel like we're gonna drown, you know? So, Jeff, it's like, I still will go back to number one. I choose number one. Stay where we are and make that facility work like unbelievable. Get a waste sign up, spend $1,000 and put some signs up that even tell you where the washroom is. No one knows where the washroom is. The simplest of things.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. I have a question. So I'll be real blunt. None of your suggestions are wild. You know, they're not wild, radical suggestions. They're suggestions based on your experience of the markets, your experience of your own business. And you've shared them with me before as well. Here's the question. What kind of timeline do you think makes sense in terms of implementing these solutions you're suggesting? So like, for instance, the one you suggested about the upper market level, like from your perspective, right? You talked about amperages and those kinds of things, right? Being issues. You talked about the physical layout being an issue. You talked about creating a food court type atmosphere upstairs as an issue. You talked about a bunch of other things external to the market, which of course we can't think about as a market. But what's a timeline, from your perspective, what's a reasonable timeline look like to accomplish something? Because you're saying, do something, do anything, right?
Yeah.
So I'm saying to you, what does it look like timelines for you? What do you think looks realistic to you?
I would say that if you're looking at major construction, which is what is needed, renovation of the facility, which the report states that we have to do something with it, if you look at it, that's a little longer because you have to have an idea of what you're truly going to work towards. But if I look at the market, yes, you could do things like help with the hours automatically. Like, do some beautification, figure out what to do with the York Boulevard area. Can you please open, like right now, I had a conversation with Bill the other day. What can we do right now? Right now we could say, please, talk to the florists that are in there and ask the florists and the 2 farmers, really 3 if you include the winery, and say, would you be interested in moving up to the York Boulevard area, that whole atrium, that whole area that's open? Open up the doors and let people as they drive by see flowers and fruit even, like somebody, you've got to look at, so yes, what can you do right away? Right away you could make some of those changes that could happen by the fall,
Thank you.
Thanks.
So by the fall, thank you. I'm just trying to get a sense from you of what it looks like. I want to make sure I understand, because sometimes when people come forward and they ask questions, they say, do something, do anything now. I always wonder, okay, what does now look like to you, right? So that's helpful. A couple things you think are longer term, some things you think we can implement by the fall. That's helpful.
Can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
Cameron?
Yeah.
The one thing about ours, and this is you have 47 right now, 47 vendors at the market with all different ideas. 47 vendors that will go ahead and state that the hours should be this and the hours should be that. The big thing here is you've got a situation where you've got food vendors, and you have non-food vendors, as in restaurant, okay, that are serving food, and the others. And there is this thing that is like there's 2 divisions. There's this group and then there's that group. And it's like, what can we do right now, like immediately within the next couple of weeks? Figure out a way to at least go ahead and maybe secure, let them stay on longer. How does that work? It's possible. Any solution is possible. You could figure out a way to say that food court area, we have a west entrance with nothing there. There's a west entrance. You've got a vendor bathroom that could be used. You can put up a couple, you can put a barricade up. I bought them for my unit. We could put something up and, figure out if the fire department is okay and security, but give them an opportunity maybe to work till 6 or 7. And at the same time, there are vendors that do not want to be there adamantly till after 5 or 4. And these are ones that have been there for 60 years and 30 years and 35 years. If you ask them, they'll say to you, we're not staying. We don't want to be here till 6 o'clock at night, And so the reality is looking at it and say, really what's going on there? Yeah, you're going to have an exit. If you say 6 o'clock, you are going to have an absentee problem. Anne did a wonderful thing a couple months ago. She said at the beginning of the year that the hours that we have right now, because we talked about them, when you came to the board to talk about, get an idea, back at the market with the vendors, what do you think, right? And we basically said, we concluded and said that we're going to wait until this report. But the thing that the big issue was that not everyone was going to agree, right? So how do you do that? How do you get this, how do you make this possible?
Thank you. I appreciate your delegation.
Thank you.
We have 2 more, and then we're going to try and accelerate this meeting so we can get out of here by 7-ish. I have a plan for that, believe it or not. So the next person on here is Eric. So Eric, you've got 5 minutes. Take it away when you're ready.
Okay, thank you so much. I hope you can hear me okay. Wonderful.
I'm not very good.
No, it's not.
If you press the little mouse.
Press the button. It's on red though. It's on the red light number 1. This.
There you go.
Oh, okay, yeah, it's on the, I guess it's a different channel. Thanks for the opportunity to present. And the biggest thank you, I would say at this point, is to the sole shareholder and council for bringing this report's discussion to this forum, because that's where it should have started. And on the topic of locations of the market, which we're just talking about, this is not the most exciting thing, but I think it's still important, is to talk about the bureaucratic location of the Hamilton Farmers Market within the city's overall organizational structure. And I think it's telling the council is challenged to engage with a staff recommendation that was not sourced from the board in the first instance, even though there had been the prior board meeting just 2 days prior to that being on the agenda for council, which is not fair to council. But I think if we connect the dots, this is a pattern that we've seen over the last couple of years when I was involved formally on the board. I should say that as by way of when you said affiliation and so on, my prior experience on the board. That troubled us during the worst of the lockdown and the pandemic and so on. And so I think that's something that needs to be considered along with that. And I've noticed that there's such a different range of experience for different boards and agencies, depending upon where they fit within the overall organizational structure. For example, the taxis and so on, when they were having trouble during the lockdown, they had a very different experience in their engagement of what should we do next. I remember at the relevant organizational structure within that, council at the time was asking, how did you come to this arrangement? And the answer is, well, we negotiated that with the taxi union and so on. Wow, that was refreshing. We had no opportunity to do the same sort of discussion then. So that's my first point to make there. I think this board should consider sort of the relationship there and ask for it to be in a way that's more of an ally relationship rather than this other one, which I think surprised a lot of us because as an avid market shopper, all of my food is sourced from there. All of my family's food is sourced from there. Is that right after this made the news, the discussion at the market amongst customers was all about where's the market moving, when's it moving, and so on. These sort of discussions that happen in this room, these are sort of internal discussions, but they do have consequences. And these sort of reports might seem like bureaucratic exercises, but they have consequences. When we look at, for example, the presentations like this about the Hamilton Farmers Market, all we see is the facility, glass and concrete structure. And that, I think, sort of speaks to another part of the connecting the dots at work here, which is that we need to stop seeing it as a collection of glass and concrete. It's a community. It's amazing that even on the Markets Main website, we don't have photos of people enjoying themselves. I mean, it's like, wow. And I think we need to approach it with that sort of in mind. Most important fundamental thing, self-governance. The more that we can have at these forums, and even decentralized from this, the better. And the missed opportunity in the recent history, the last 15 years of the market, was when that major renovation happened. It was a missed opportunity because there was not enough self-governance at the time. It was an outsider devising ideas about what would be best for the market with their own vision and their own seductive CGI images to seduce all those to approve spending millions of dollars and so on that. With the consequence, then we didn't have the opportunity to, when everyone was moving back, to have
You have a minute left?
the sort of split sort of arrangement that we've been talking about and so on. A couple of things. So with the request of the $200,000 for the consultant study, which was before council and we'll go back to at some point, I would say no. I would say there's enough things you can dust off, blow off the dust on existing things on the board that the board has decided in the past. The board in the past, for example, found out it would take about $60,000 to repaint the lines on York Boulevard and to redo the signage to allow the possibility that people could actually stop, even just temporarily, in front of the market. As one of many items that we had previously with dollars attached to them, needing for some funds, that is easily within the realm of the $200,000 exercise, which is not going to deliver you the things you want, just going to raise more doubts in the community. It's going to service negativity about the market and so on. There's thousands for targeted mailings to potential new customers who are local, which is very important because now the market from being the central Hamilton Farmers Market is becoming more of a Ward 2 market because, of course, of this terrible deal that we're also bound ourselves in with regards to the parking and so on. And I have some other ideas that I'd like to share.
Just to wrap it up,
Yeah.
yeah.
And some other ideas if you'd like to ask me on that, including questions or some of the other questions that have come up. Before, and just finally going back to 2016 on the board at the time, we were trying to get the city to make sure that the market facility was kept in a condition such that we meet the facility condition index of at least good. There's an assessment of the condition of the building and all the buildings in the city of Hamilton and what needs to be done and so on. We need to honor what the board has already figured out in the past of what has its priorities and so on, rather than some new vision from outsiders who will have their own ideas and aren't going to grant the realities of Hamilton. Thanks so much for this opportunity. I'm happy to answer lots of questions.
Questions for Eric? Go ahead.
Thanks, Eric. The additional review that you're talking about is, we've just finished the visioning report. Sorry, I'm crossing my own wires in my head. There's a future governance report. Are you, through your presentation, hinting or maybe strongly saying, let's not do the governance report, let's just move ahead with some comparison to some traction? Is that, if I had to offer a summation, is that where you're coming from?
Yes, I would say pause this sort of cascade of consultancies that work. On the governance report, I think it's fairly straightforward that we need a mixture of vendors and shoppers involved in governing the market. And the more that can be decided at that level, the better. It's quite telling, actually. I think I'm formally the only one that doesn't have a vendor hat on or a city employee hat on at this meeting. And it's, I really encourage you to have a good mix of representation on the board in that respect. And I don't see the continuation of that because that had started and then it was interrupted. And I think now the question, I don't know if it's still in play, as to whether to pause or completely cancel or redo the contract and so on, because this was started even before the last consulting report. But that one as well was not initiated at the board request. And so I would say that in that respect, there's nothing to be gained from going forward in that.
Thank you. Not yet.
Oh, sorry.
Any other questions for Eric? You have lots of suggestions, and so I don't think we can take them all up now, but perhaps there'll be an opportunity to submit those in writing, if you could. That was my question too, which is that you have submitted some things in writing before, and frankly, you've written a volume, I would say a volume or tome on the market in terms of some of the things I've already seen. For reasons that I'm not going to get into now, we don't have a perfect continuity of documents here, so it might be useful for you to forward them to me or others, and we can send those around if you have clear comments to review, read and review. But I don't have a question other than, are you willing to do that?
Yes, for sure, 100%. My commitment is there long term, and thank you for recognizing that. I do. I wrote recently in an op-ed spec in an article in the Hamilton Spectator that mentioned a few suggestions and so on. That was an abridged version from something that was twice as long originally, so happy to provide that. Plus, as the first citizen treasurer and then former chair, there's a lot of documents that are still in the public domain because we put them on Google Share Drive, although I noticed that I think there may be some that have been maybe unintentionally lost in the process, but I still have those. So yeah, happy to do that. And happy to play the role again formally at some point if there are more shoppers involved on governing the board. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. I know there'll be a chance for comments at the end of delegations for folks who want to make them, myself included. I have some to make, but I'll be more questions now. So our last delegation will be from Darren Krieger. So we've got 5 minutes to get there.
Thank thanks for having me here tonight. I'm going to be giving a different perspective.
Sure. No, on your mic go first. There you go.
Thanks a lot for having me tonight. So I can kind of read my kind of searches effort. I'll probably give you a different perspective than you might have already heard the last few. First of all, I have a general store in the farmers market, and I also have one on James Street North. The experiences that we're having in the farmers market is not necessarily just the farmers market in some of the cases. Even James Street North right now has been struggling over the last basically 2 years. If anything, my market location is actually outperforming my retail location on James Street North right now. The challenges of James Street North, a lot of them are very similar to what the market is going through. So I don't think it's an isolated situation. I think it's our entire Ward 2 area. I know it's been said about the homeless, the transients, the drugs. There's a lot of customers who are not feeling safe coming into that area of the city. I know it's been in the news all the time. What do we do? There's been stabbings around the market area. There's just been so much going on, and I don't want to really dive into that because we all know what's going on. Now, as far as the market hours, I've been a shopper at the market ever since I moved to Hamilton, which was in 2005. In 2019, even before then, I used to go to the market quite frequently on a Friday to grab dinner and take it back to the store. We used to keep the store open a little bit later, even during our calls. I would get to the market, and even before the pandemic, you already had vendors not even staying open till 6. This was before the pandemic. You could say it's the pandemic, the hours changes. I really don't think it's the hours per se. I think a lot of it has been, they may have stopped coming because vendors are not open. Not because the market's not open, it was because the vendors are not open. Yeah. And that's one of the biggest problems. So there has to be better enforcement that vendors must be open. And if you can't open, you at least let the office know why you can't be there. So that way they're aware. So even looking at some of the different hours of different markets, I've always said this, and I've said this to Bill as well. If you're going to look at really true comparison markets as far as style, down the road in Kitchener, a 2-level market, upper level is a food hall, the lower level is basically the market. They're only open 1 day a week on the lower level where the shopping area is. The food hall, however, is open all week, except Sundays, and they have different hours. So that is possible, because we have an upper level that could easily do that. And then, as I was also saying too, from my experiences, is that there are a lot of things that can be done now or quicker than others. A lot of businesses are saying, well, ventilation. If you were to open up a storefront location, doesn't matter what restaurant is, you're going to have to pay for some of those costs to have proper ventilation in that establishment. Unless you are lucky to find a storefront or a former restaurant that has it all in already. But other than that, those costs are bear not by the property owner, it's actually the actual tenants going into those buildings. They're the ones that are paying for those costs. So I know everything costs money. I know nobody's really throwing out the money out there. But if we have $200,000 that the city is, or we're asking the city to do another study, that $200,000, some of that could be for doing proper ventilation on the upper levels, get businesses up there that maybe need a hood to do drying. Myself, being a retail business on the upper level, I would have no issues moving to the lower level if all grocery-related type businesses are on that lower level, and it can make the upper level be a food hall. And it could actually open longer hours. We also need to improve our relationships with Jackson Square. There are washrooms right outside the market doors. Sadly, that entrance is not very well used, and when it is, it's people literally just coming through the market, in one door, out the other door, and not really shoppers of the market. And I've seen that quite often. Recently, I've actually been having a pop-up vendor which does sourdough bread. She's noticed that the majority of the customers coming into the market still from York Boulevard are going down and not up. If they do go up, a lot of times they're just going right out through the doors of Brady's Mall as a shortcut. So I guess we have to ask ourselves overall, why are we in the position we're in now? Is it because there's been a lack of vendors themselves? And are they to blame because they're not opening on a regular basis? And I would say yes. Is it management? Yes. Is it the city? Yes. There are so many factors that have caused the market to go into the decline it has. Are we in a downward spiral? I would like to say, I hope not, but it could possibly be.
Lena, you're over your time. You can wrap up, thanks.
Okay. So I guess at the end of the day, with any case study, and being an accountant, being a professional who designated accountant that is, and having done case studies quite often, you always have to ask, you have to look at alternatives, what are the options? You also have to look at basically, how do we get here and how do we improve it? And to be honest, one thing that happened last week, or last board meeting, which I loved the concept, and I would like to also add to it, can it not be expanded to, how about a new campaign? Love your market. Not just love your lunch, let's do love your market, and let's bring people back that were there.
Thank you for your delegation. Are there any questions for Darren at this time? Not seeing any questions? Okay, thank you so much, Darren. At this point, I'm going to move that we receive the delegate, ask for a mover and seconder to receive the delegations. We approve them, now we're going to receive them. Councilor Beatty, and I'm going to join the queue for comments on the delegations or any questions of staff. But happy if others want to join that queue ahead of me. Councilor Beatty.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, thank you to the delegates for coming forward, putting a lot of time into the preparation of their meetings today. I also want to state that this room is not conducive to having, I feel like the delegates are at that end, and we're at this end, and maybe there's something to be said here. It would be nice to have a more communal conversation than this format, because I think there's a lot of value from what the vendors are bringing forward. It sounds like, if I had to give an overarching theme, that there's a level of frustration that not another bloody study, let's just get to work on trying to improve the market. And I see some heads nodding. I'm thankful that there was a variety of expressions today, but I think that there was an overarching theme that everyone who is invested, we want to see things change, we want to see things improve, and you're calling upon this board to be the lightning rod, as it were, to gravitate towards and make things happen. And let's quit talking and start acting, I think is the theme that we're hearing. So very thankful for those very forthcoming bids. Thank you.
I have a question for the chair.
Go ahead. Was there a question of staff?
Question more so for you. Or
Okay.
no.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
I'm wondering, obviously there's a consensus here that these businesses, they're earning, the market jobs get very slow in the summer, the hours are not even part-time hours. I'm wondering what can be a solution for this? How do we actually go about making a change rather than just keep pushing it off until different board meetings? How do we actually make that decision?
Yeah, I was going to address that, so thanks for asking. Is it okay if I go ahead?
Yeah, absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, so I'll just echo Councilor Beatty in saying I sense the frustration. Again, I'll say it as many times as I need to. I've talked to every single vendor at the market over the last while, and some more recent than others, some more frequent than others. And like the irritation and frustration is palpable from everybody who's in the market. And people have different things they're irritated about specifically. Not everyone's vexed about the same thing, but everyone's vexed. And I think those are because of the conditions of frankly, a bunch of historical decisions that none of us are necessarily responsible for, but that we're beholden to and that are in front of us right now. That's part of it. The other part of it, I think, is timing is absolutely killing the market. Waiting for this report has been long, excruciating. But I want to read from a couple things from the report, and then I'll get to answering your questions later. It said everything in this report that it came up with as a solution was said by people at today's meeting. So the reason why I want to mention this is because I think it's important to recognize where we're on the same page and where we're not. Address the physical limitations of the market. Expand the spaces. Strengthen connections to the outdoors. Change the composition of folks who are at the market. Make sure there's more programming. Open a market cafe with later hours. Increase management's capacity to deal with issues. Expand the hours. Strengthen the market's messaging, advertising, and promotion, and maintain adequate parking. Like, I've never heard all the things that I've ever heard fall in these 10 buckets. So as much as this report has been somewhat long in coming and perhaps expensive from some people's perspective and so on, it outlines every single issue. So I just want to say, like, your opinions about reports notwithstanding, the lightning rod focus around getting an answer through this mechanism is right in front of us. I'm saying, we have a report, it's right in front of us. This is literally the motion about which we're making decisions we're at now. I do think this is a time to ask our staff to come back with short-term, medium-term, and long-term solutions, and that's the end of the conversation. Like, that's the ask this board has to make. We can't sit here on the fly and start going, well, I think the hours should be this, and then Jeff, I think they should, well, what about 7 o'clock? And you say, what about 3? What about 9? I think this kind of thing is an incredible waste of time and also really unprofessional and going to get us absolutely nowhere. So we have to be able to come back here with something right and have a look at it, reflect on it, and tweak that. Frankly, that's my job every day, over there in the other room. It's Jeff's job. And so we have to have the same standards here, right? We have to have the same standards that we have here, that we have over there. Where we have to say, we need to have a report back that gives us an indication after having received years of feedback and finally having the culmination of this report, what's the answer? What should we do with our hours? But we can't just say, well, what should we do with them? And then if the answer is nothing, accept that. The answer is obviously we need to change them, right? So there's some things we can do, I think, in the short term is committing to, from my perspective anyways, committing to actually making some changes. Like, we can commit to doing that. To Jeff's point, they're not going to happen overnight. They're going to happen, some could happen by the fall, some could happen sooner than that, some will take longer to implement. But we have the totality of the information we require at this point. There's nothing we're missing. I'm not aware of any information we don't have, anyone's opinion who's missing from the conversation. Now, to be fair, and Eric brought this up, we're missing 4 or 5 extra people, plus 2 more who aren't here tonight. We're missing all the shoppers' positions in the market. But if we wait for them to be appointed, I'll tell you right now, as someone on the selection committee, we're going to be waiting a while because it's going to be selection to pick interview applicants, then it goes from there to interviews, then the interviews happen, the people have to come here, we have to go through some more orientation with them before they're ready to make decisions about this. We can't, that's going to take till next year, in my opinion, before we're in a place where we're able to do that. I don't think we can afford to do that. I think there's some short-term things we have to get on with already. There's a critical mass of us anyways, and we represent a majority on the board, regardless of whether or not all of us are here. We represent a majority, 6 of us, as far as I know. I think there's 11 total or 10 total, that's a majority. So if 6 of us can be here, we can make those decisions. So that's my commitment to you, is we're going to do something. We're not just going to sit in our hands and ask for a report. But from my perspective, we really deeply need to wait till this report is back. I don't see the point in having gone and asked a bunch of people to do this work and then say, well, they've done the work and we won't look at the report at all. We won't address it at all. We'll just make a decision in the absence. Then the report comes back and we all feel stupid because we ought to have considered, oh, wait a minute, they mentioned this or that in the report that was very important or very insightful. And frankly, there are a ton of insightful things in this report. Do I agree with everything? Certainly not. So I think that what the whole report tells us in those 10 recommendations that are distilled from the report is, in order to move forward, we have to make some changes. Bingo. That's it. That's a very simple recipe in front of us. What those changes are, I think we have to get on with deciding some short-term ones, get on with deciding some medium-term ones, and then have discussions about longer-term ones. I'm not going to sit here now and propose those verbally. I think we have to come back at our next meeting with an actual something in writing and that says, this is how we're going to get on with it. Because as far as I'm concerned, I didn't join this market board to not get some stuff done and make things better. The whole reason I joined this board and volunteered to be the chair was because I really think that there's a lot of potential with the current folks that are there. There's a potential for this market to realize something regardless of what's going on downtown. And let me tell you, no one knows what's going on downtown. I promise you, I hear from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people on a regular basis about what's going on downtown. There are immense challenges, and as long as everyone's willing to be along for the ride, and that's the thing I need to leave my comments on, as long as we're all prepared for the ride, because I don't think we fully all understand just how disrupted this area is going to be in the next 3 to 15 years, but it's going to require an immense effort from everybody to maintain this location, if that's the preferred route. And if it's not the preferred route, it's going to take just as much effort to sell a future location. So if it's a temporary location, just as much effort. But, 2 more things. Every other market has dealt with this. I lived in London, I lived in Guelph, I lived in Kitchener-Waterloo, St. Catharines. I've been to all these markets many times, right? All of them are different than the Hamilton's farmer's market. Like, you're right about the stats you provided. On paper, they make complete sense, but they're all very different places. Kitchener, I agree with Darren, is probably similar for lots of different reasons. London also for different reasons. But I lived in these places and use these markets every week. And so, sure, there are lessons from them that we have to take away. And I think this, again, the report has distilled a lot of information. And these folks are not dead. They're available for a chat to follow up on their remarks and to talk to. So, where we have a question of clarification, they can in their report. So that's my commitment anyways, just from my perspective, is that we definitely have to make some changes. We have to do some very soon. What it looks like, I don't know. I'm hoping that we'll have a July meeting and an August meeting, and that will be done, and we'll be on the road to having some things implemented in the short term. That's my commitment, that we'll do that. Please, Honorable Ann.
Through the chair, Mayor, I make a comment.
Yeah, of course, that's the point of this.
For the last 2 years, the Hamilton Farmers Market has been sabotaged by the system that is set up for the board. We have no committees. The most important committee we can have is a marketing committee. I am sure if Christy and Jeff and they were having a good lunch crowd. We need bodies in the market. There is no program, there is nothing happening to bring bodies in the market. That is our problem. That is our fundamental problem. Nothing is being done. Programs that are happening now, the activity is for the people who come to the market. There's nothing external saying come to the market. There's no message. We definitely need, how much, you said next year before we can get committee set up? Is that what I'm hearing? From the
No, that's not what I said. What I said was we won't have all of our board members onboarded and oriented probably till the end of the year. The farmers market board,
Yeah,
that's what
so-
I said.
How do you see that playing out with the committees? For
There's
instance,
nothing
the marketing
stopping-
committee?
There's nothing stopping the committees from happening. Yeah, we were all waiting, just to re-center us all, right? We were all waiting for this report. This is day one in terms of having this report in front of us. This is the first time this committee's ever considered it. From here, we have a bunch of decisions to make. Some of those things might be about setting up committees. Totally, let's do it. Nothing is stopping us. We needed to wait for this report back because this is also the report that allows us to possibly do the rest of the governance review if we wish to.
Well, I would certainly like to suggest today that we start working on a program to have a marketing and an operations committee set up. We need that. And from what I'm hearing from our vendor community, there seems to be a lot of experience and in the vendor community itself. We need to get ahead and get those committees going. We need to, can anybody tell me what's going to happen for Thanksgiving, the Thanksgiving weekend? That is our biggest weekend of the year other than Christmas. There's nothing on the board. There's nothing that I'm hearing of. We can't do the usual thing, pumpkin jelly beans and, oh, we've done that. We need fresh ideas. We need a strong marketing plan. And I am sure with that, a lot of the frustration for all of us will go. I hear them. I feel it. I'm experiencing that myself. But my frustration is we don't have the tools. We don't have what can make a difference right now. And that is one thing we can do right now. Get the committees together. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. I think you're right. I also think that the other issue we have is facing us with respect to marketing is a big component of this report and something I think we're all not acknowledging for reasons that are, I don't know why exactly, but when we look at these other markets and ask ourselves what the resources are and how they function, right? The contributions from municipalities, we're not having that discussion. We haven't had that discussion. And I love this comparison. But if we had some charts showing just the kinds of things, in-kind things that cities do, the amount of staffing resources that cities provide or don't provide, where advertising revenues come from, all that stuff would give us a much clearer picture of what the distance between where we are now is and where we need to go. Because there's been a lot of complaints about, oh, we're spending this much on staffing or that much on staffing and this isn't going well. And we don't have the resources. I'm not suggesting that there aren't vendors who aren't willing to do it. What I'm saying is the vendors will get together on a committee, marketing committee perhaps, maybe Jeff will say, I'll chair the marketing committee. Great. So then we bring that board, the report from the marketing committee back to the next meeting and we get those things going. Someone has to operationalize a lot of that work. What I hear constantly from vendors is, you're busy doing stuff, right? You're not there to provide marketing outside your own business. The market has to provide marketing. We don't have a full-time marketing job. We don't have a full-time person who's doing Cindy's work. We don't have these resources. And so I think it's just really incumbent upon us to be recognized that great ideas can be generated and they can go and they can just die. Because there's nowhere to actually operationalize, make them happen, make these things happen. So part of this report is that recommendation saying, yes, we need to market. We have to pay someone to do the marketing job. We have to have someone in place to do these kinds of things. I think vendors are worried, if I get this right, legacy-wise, as a whole group, that they're going to bear the cost and burden of all those things, right? That they're going to bear the cost of operationalizing all this through increases to their rent. Because historically, that has happened, where we've seen the burden of decisions made by the board get borne by the vendors. So there's a tension and an anxiety there. So I'm just acknowledging what you're saying, and yes, we have to do something about it. But we'll have to actually sit and figure out who, when, and where for these committees. Which ones? We've had suggestions now for 6 committees, I think, total. And we can start them up, right? But we need people to run them, report on them, come back with the information, bring it to the board, right? Do it in a systematic way that we can actually make decisions. Because it's great if they do the work, but if we never approve the work to be done, it'll never happen. So that's my own comment to you about that. So I agree with you. I think you have to have a plan to make it successful. On that, we only have half an hour. So my suggestion is that we actually deliberate, this board spend its time here coming up with some directions for staff in terms of our next meeting. I think it's important for us to do that and discuss what we plan to do with respect to the report we've been tasked with looking at. So the report itself has 1, 2, 3 recommendations in it, A, B, and C. I'm just gonna briefly summarize them because this is part of what we're being asked to do and part of what I think we have to leave here with some sense of understanding our job to be. A, that the proposed vision statement is adopted. So there's a vision statement in Appendix A, and that vision statement is part of what Christy was talking about earlier with the why, right? In terms of what we should be saying or doing. And the question is whether or not this board wants to adopt that vision statement or not. So that's our very first job. Second job is B, that we make a decision about whether or not we want staff to go ahead and spend $200,000 to do a concept study. And laden into all that is a discussion about, though it's not right here in front of us, the governance portion of this review that's coming up. Do we want to do a governance review of the market and have a consultant's report come back? We've had a portion of it completed already, and the plan was to have the second portion of the governance review done. Do we want to do that? Do we want to wait on that to take certain actions? Right, that's a decision to make. And then C is not for us to make. Those are the three decisions I think in front of us. It's a governance-related decision, a decision about spending $200,000, and a decision about the vision statement. Now, we don't get to ultimately make the decision, the final decision, but we can make a recommendation to council, and that's our job. And I have a feeling they'll at least listen to us, with us both being here and breaking that forward, what we want to do. I don't think without everybody being here, and I don't think that we will come away with a decision this evening, sadly. I don't think we will. That's my reading of the room. I don't think we're going to come away with a final decision about what to do here. Because I think it involves us having to reckon with the whole report, which is the second appendix that was attached, which is 77 pages. So we have two choices. One is we can make a decision and recommendation about this report today if we want to send it back. That decision may just be that we want to bring forward a more comprehensive response in our July meeting. That means that we'll be meeting on July, if you want to remind me, is it July 5th?
So it was tentative at the moment.
Tentatively for July 5th.
Third.
Third it could be. Let me look.
July
Thank you. Tentatively for July 3rd. Sorry, I was just looking here. One second. Maybe.
Tentative was on Saturday, third is on Monday. We wanted to third or push it to
The answer was the 10th. The 10th. Sorry, I see my calendar now. Yes, it was the 10th. For that reason. So our next meeting would be July 10th. So, generally speaking, but Bill's on vacation at that time, which is not helpful in terms of us being able to have you here. I mean, last Monday in June is June 26th. What about a not Monday? I mean, this is obviously a really important issue, so I want to make sure that we're available. I don't think I'm available on the 26th because I have a meeting, I have a board meeting that's from 4 to 5:30. So we could be slightly later, at 6, from 6 to 8. I could do that on June 26th. Doesn't give us much time.
It's planned being out of the city that day.
Right.
That whole week, I won't be up until Saturday.
Right.
June 3rd, it'll be, it's on the 8th.
So you'll be not the other the 8th. So what about the week of July 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th? We're kind of doing this ad hoc with it. Well, here's Selena. What are you available on either the 5th, 6th, or 7th of July?
Let me take a look.
I'm not available.
July 5th. Ann?
I'm always available.
Okay. That kills that. One moment.
Is the next board meeting July 3rd?
No, the next board meeting it is not scheduled at this time. So we're trying to do that.
And July 3rd is out?
Yes, because it's the holiday Monday
Oh my.
in place of Canada Day. So our other choices are the 29th and the 30th of June. I'll start, and then we'll end this conversation momentarily, not do this in public anymore. We'll just go on email to find a date. If this doesn't work,
29th of June,
or the 29th or 30th.
29th does not work.
Okay, narrowing it down to the 30th of June, it's a Friday. So I see a nod here, nod here. Right
How
hand,
about the 28th, the Wednesday?
Can't do that day. So our choice is still Monday, June 26th is still a day we can do it slightly later in the day from 6 to 8, from 6 onwards. That seems to be our.
Can you do that?
That would work for me.
I can't do
What about the week of after the holiday Monday, any days in those work?
No, none of those work.
Oh, okay.
What about the 30th? Can we meet at least 6?
I can do Monday the 26th.
Yeah, we don't have 100% staff support that day.
So the 30th.
What are the other options?
30th.
I think we'll stop this conversation now, as fun as it is. We've tried to find a date for our next meeting, haven't been able to find one yet. We may stick around afterwards and just compare notes to find one, how about that? But the goal will be to have one in the next 3 to 4 weeks where we can come back with some solutions here, because I don't think we are in deliberating the discussion so far. But I would like to hear from the committee members about these recommendations. Like that's before us right now. So are there any things here about which we can make a decision tonight, or do you think we can make that decision in our next meeting with some input from our staff? Yeah, so Jeff's suggesting that we make a decision about whether or not we want to do the next part of the governance review or not, and whether we want to wait for that before we do other things. So I'll open the floor on that discussion. Jeff, since you want to talk about it, take it away.
Happy to do that, thank you, Chair. I would propose that we not continue with the governance review until such time as we're able to implement some of the changes that are before us. It feels like if we continue with another review, that we're just pushing out any firm action. And I think, hearing from the vendors, and I think that there would be a consensus around this board that we need to both do and be seen doing something more concrete with regards to trying to improve the conditions and improve the success rate. And asking for further study of governance does not seem to be as important as those other issues. We can come back and complete the governance portion once we start to see some traction from some of these concrete changes that the visioning report has brought us. That would be my opinion.
Anyone else on that subject?
I would just be curious to know if it is an either or, if we could do both. Like, is it not something that we could delegate a little bit of time to each meeting to make sure we're confident on both of them? Because the governance review is something that's been ongoing for a significant period of time, as far as I'm aware.
There's no harm in us pursuing the governance review and just waiting until it gets here, not deeming it something we have to act on. No, we're not waiting on. The sense I have is we don't want to wait to make any more decisions. So whether or not the governance review proceeds, we can still make decisions that wouldn't have a governance impact. There's plenty of those it seems like we could make or help or assist in making. Does that make sense? So not to delay it. What do you think, Ray?
So I'm not sure I would necessarily delay, completing the governance review. I think a lot of governance review items aren't necessarily going to impact the implementation of the visioning exercise. I think the governance review was put on pause because there was some thought that if there was some dramatically different vision for the market, that may invalidate some of the recommendations that come out of the governance review, then obviously it would make sense to continue. But on the basis that there's some consensus and some approval on what the future vision is going to be, I'm not certain that the governance review necessarily needs to hold up implementation. There's likely going to be some recommendations in the governance review because it's also a bit of an operational review. But there may be some recommendations in there with respect to, say, staffing levels, as an example, or resource levels. So in that context, that might be beneficial to implementation, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this board cannot move forward with implementation of the approved vision and any of the actions that come out of that. They don't need to wait for the governance review to be completed, is really what I would suggest. I think delaying the governance review in the alternative likely isn't going to be of any real benefit outside of, at some point in time, the consultant's probably going to want to start from scratch as opposed to, half of it is already done, right? So at this point in time, it's really how do we move towards some recommendations or some options for consideration?
Thank you very much. So I think we have a kind of consensus here, which is that we don't need to start the governance review today or have a motion to do it today, but in light of what we do decide to do at next month's meeting or at the next meeting, what the decisions we actually make, then we can decide whether or not the governance review should proceed immediately or be delayed for some reason. Because I don't think we have a consensus right now. This is, again, our first opportunity to deliberate the 7-page report, hear a bit of feedback from delegates. I don't think it's a chance for us to, at this moment, then come away with something. We don't have a staff report from internally here at the market right now that's making any recommendations about this. We're just reacting to what this city report said. On that, I don't have the sense we're ready to make a decision about these recommendations, unless anybody really wants to put a motion forward and vote on it. I think our next challenge is scheduling time between now and next meeting for some kind of a subcommittee of the board to work with, whether we like it or not, this is somewhat a working board in some ways because of the resources we have. And we have to be able to come here confidently with something to say on July for the next meeting. So something for you to think about, and we can talk about this, is how do we get a non-quorum of the board to have discussions about what our next meeting is going to look like, right? That's going to have to be something that we do. Having a quasi-executive committee. I'm so far the only person. Jeff and I are the only two people who have any kind of role here in the board. It's chair and vice chair. So we don't have other roles assigned right now. We didn't do that because of the governance review, and because we were thinking that we wouldn't be assigning roles, but I'm just letting everyone know the executive committee so far is just Jeff and I. So I'll leave that for now as a thought out in the open. And you said you wanted to strike some committees. And so you said specifically the operations committee and specifically the marketing committee. So I want to leave the meeting today without us having addressed that issue. I guess how you see us doing that and making that work immediately, or did you want to bring forward a plan in the next meeting how to do that? Exactly.
I would prefer to bring it to the next meeting, where I spend more time on it, where I try to get some more feedback from the people and teams. It's got some experience, probably more than I do. But I just want to bring something substantial, something that, or information that we can possibly try to work with in getting these boards set up, the two of them.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I think we have 3 jobs for our next meeting. I've forgotten one of them, so as I talk, I hope one of you will remember them for me. One job at our next meeting is that we will have a discussion about striking committees finally. So we'll get to striking some committees of the board, and we'll discuss how we're going to do that, what makes sense. In terms of how those committees will, in a basic way, how those committees will run, how those committees will report, and how they'll report to the board, and then how the board will action those decisions. So at our next meeting, we'll do that. Number 2 thing we'll do at our next meeting is we will respond to this request from the city to give them an answer about the recommendations they put forward, which are A and B here, and which inherently is the governance review. We'll make a decision about timing for the governance review, whether or not we want to do it at all, or whether or not when we want to restart it. Third thing we'll do is we'll respond in the 77-page report from the consultant. We'll break down, and again, I didn't hear a single complaint that came from a concern or idea or beautiful suggestion that didn't come that wasn't already in this report. So I want to be clear about that. This report is a great anchor for us to break those things apart. For what in here can be done in the short, medium, and long term, and then for the short goals, what are we doing? So at the next meeting, I think we have to make some decisions about the short-term goals. What is the most immediate goal in that category? What's the second? So this meeting, next meeting, we're leaving possibly making decisions about the hours, making decisions about other kinds of things that so we can finally put these issues to rest. There have been some long-standing issues here, and frankly, it's kind of embarrassing. So we need to just get on with making a decision, and I think we need input from our staff to do that. So that's my motion, is that those are the 3 things we do in our next meeting. The staff come forward with reports that will support us in that work, and we just make some decisions here. I think there's a plethora of commentary out there, and so I think we understand what some short-term wins might be. I'll just recap it, some things we heard this evening, things like occupying the York Boulevard space, like just doing it, like just let's occupy that space and make it work. And we talked at our last meeting about a seating thing, and there were some challenges with seating, like, because there wasn't as much seating as we thought there was in the storage, and it was heavy. And so, reaching out to the city and trying to get seating from the city, and that didn't really go very well, I would say. So we ran into some barriers there. So I think by the next meeting, hopefully we'll be able to break those down, talk about what can be done there. Because one of the ideas was, to put some seating up there and see if that helped to drive some traffic into the market. And so we had that discussion at the last meeting. And the goal is to have it implemented by now, but it hasn't been. So does this make sense? Are people put a seconder for this motion at our next meeting to do this? Thanks. John. Ray?
Sorry, I'm not voting. If I could just make
Sure.
one comment with regards to the recommendation B in particular. So I know everyone's going to go away and give some thought to this for the next meeting. There may be a little misunderstanding as to what the intention of that recommendation is, and so let me just bring some clarity to that. Because I think that exercise actually that's being recommended there in the staff report could be very beneficial in a practical sense. So the intention there was to hire some architect, engineer type people to actually look at concepts of, call it zoning, or maybe we move everybody, this group up to here, that group to there, and to examine what are some of the specific requirements from a physical perspective to achieve that. So that might be something that would be very valuable to this board in terms of trying to implement those kinds of changes. I think that would be a very practical exercise. It's not intended to be, sort of this 30,000-foot visioning governance kind of thing. It's really on the ground, boots on the ground kind of exercise, including examining things such as how do we create a better interface between the inside and the outside and things of that nature. I think it'd be a very interactive type of exercise. It's not tell some consultants to go away and come back with a bunch of stuff. I think there would be a lot of dialogue as part of that exercise. Not been designed, obviously, because approval and direction is required, but I just wanted to sort of put that on the table in case there's some misunderstanding as to what the intention of that exercise would be.
I don't know if there was a misunderstanding. I think it's just a matter of making a decision as to whether or not people think that we should do that study to do that. That may be one of the goals is determined as a medium-term or longer-term goal is to try and reorganize the market. That might take a year to do. And so I think the most important thing for us to do as a market is lead. And so that means let's get clear on what are we doing, when are we deciding stuff. Like, what are the short-term things that we can accomplish? What are the medium-term things we can accomplish? What are the long-term things that we can accomplish? Let's get on the same page that we all want to accomplish the same things and set a timeline in motion. Because right now, there's no accountability right now. We're talking about these things, and until this report came forward, it was just like a never-ending timeline. And that's the frustration I keep hearing from people. So, a way to be accountable is to set ourselves a schedule, right? What can we achieve in the short term, even the long term? Let's get on with doing it. That seems to be the only way we're ready to move forward here as a board. We have to get on the same page, I think. John?
Just to comment back to what Ray said there, I see that, they got an upset budget of $200,000 here for a study, but what I don't necessarily see from the city is any funds where we can actually action something. So let's say we spend this upset of $200,000 to redesign that upper level, but it's going to cost $1 million to do it. Like, we don't have any insight from the city on what kind of expenditures we can do to actually action some of those items.
To be fair, we won't know until we do the study. Like, we can't just pick a number out of our hats.
But even with some of the actions and recommendations that we could action, we don't have any kind of idea of what the city is willing to contribute to make these decisions.
I think we have to not borrow that anxiety, if you don't mind interjecting.
No.
I think borrowing that anxiety is what's killing the market. Because, in some ways, meaning we have to set a priority and we have to give direction about what we want to do. Once we have a short list, then we have to ask, right? We say to the city, we need $175 grand to do this thing, and that's a question we just ask for that, ask for the money to implement those capital projects, right? So I think right now what's happening is just like, it's like two positive ions are trying to have this conversation and they just keep repelling from one another, right? So I think we just have to have a conversation where we say, it takes the leadership as a board and say, these are the things we think we need to do in the short term. And then we approach city council if we need funding for them and say, here's how much we need, we're asking for it.
Fair, this is just my first foray into this, so I want to understand how we get from A to B there.
Yeah, it's also mine, so like, I appreciate the dialogue because I think we're all trying to find our way here and it's been a very difficult process for a board that's lost a lot of members over the last couple of years and still is missing a bunch of members on this board. And again, big pilot and report, a board that doesn't have a lot of resources, right? So we're doing the best we can to try and manage the situation. And I think in light of the fact that we're getting this report now, this is a good step forward to try and organize ourselves to actually execute these things. On the note 654, there's a bunch of things that you want to talk about, Bill, on this agenda. Are any of them life and death? Will we wait till another time to talk about them?
Through the chair, only one item, and that is the acceptance by the board and the approval of the 2022 Hamilton Farmers Market Financial Audit Report conducted by our independent auditor,
Yes.
KPMG.
Yep. I just want to make sure everyone's got a copy and we can talk about that briefly. Thank you, Bill. It's not in here, but I think it's in, I have it in the email, so.
I would, through the chair, I did prepare a quick slide.
Go ahead.
So basically, every year, we go through an independent audit of all the financials of the market. It's conducted by KPMG. It involves the finance department or market office as well. So basically, this is their opinion. We audited the financial statements of the Hamilton Farmers Market Corporation, which comprise of the statements of financial position as of December 31st, 2022, the statement of the operations for the year that ended, and the statement of cash flows for the year, and notes to the financial statements, including a summary of significant accounting policies. So in our opinion, the accompanying financial statements present fairly and in all material respects the financial position of the FD as of December 31st, 2022, and its results of operations as cash flows for the year that ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So that is essentially a summary. So there are no significant issues to report to the board based on 2022.
I've reviewed it. We don't have the auditor present to ask questions, but there's nothing from the auditor that's specifically concerning. Just want to read a couple stats out for people to have some comfortability, understanding where we kind of are at. This statement of cash flows on page 3 of this report, is that in hundreds of thousands of dollars? I presume it must be. But if not, I'm even more interested in the answer. It looks like, It looks like our cash at the end of the year is $2,300. That's what it looks like. According to the statement of cash flows on page 3.
Sorry. I don't have-
No, it's okay. I presume it's just that we're doing some rounding of other kinds of things there. It's not, that's not accurate, and that's not accurate in terms of,
It's up on the screen right
page 3, according to the pages at the bottom, I should say, sorry.
So then this one here.
No, sorry.
Okay.
There's pages at the bottom of the pages. Keep going, see, 1, yeah, 2, this page, yeah. Now, I understand we're on a tight ship here, I just want to underline the point. Okay, that's what I'm trying to understand. What I want to understand is the point. Right?
Actual dollars.
Those are actual dollars. Right? Just, I don't have a motion to make or anything Kate just said. I just want to make sure everyone's seeing this. I also thought that, again, the audit didn't represent anything that I was worried about. And we're not here to talk about the financial, like every bit of finances of the organization. We're here to talk about whether or not the audit can be approved. And I see nothing in this that tells me otherwise. I just wanted to make a point that this is a good, valuable document for us to understand our budget and our accounts and the state of the families and farmers market from a different perspective. And so I encourage everyone here to lean into reading this as we get ready to prepare a budget for this year, which will be coming later in the year. That was my only point in bringing that up. Otherwise, I need a mover and a seconder to approve the report of the auditor. Moved by Jeff. Will someone second that? I'll second it, since I have to sign it anyways.
Can you send that? I don't recall receiving that.
Sure, no problem, I'm sure Bill can send it to you, yeah. Make sure everyone's a copy of that, thank you. All those in favor of approving the auditor's statement? Anyone opposed or abstaining? Not seeing any, that passes. I'm just going to look at our agenda. So everyone will stick around for a few minutes at the end. We will forego having a new camera session. We'll forego the rest of our items here. I would say prepare yourself for a little bit of a longer meeting at our next meeting. I wanted to honor keeping this to 2 hours, but I think our next meeting will necessarily have to deal with some of the issues from this meeting we didn't get to, plus the major stuff that we want to talk about in short, medium, long-term solutions to the market. So if we'll stick around now, we'll schedule that. Otherwise, kind of a motion to adjourn. Sabine, Sean, all those in favor of adjourning the meeting for today? Keep your hand. Selena,
Yes,
thank you, and have a great day. That motion carries. Bye for now.
thanks, bye guys.
Selena, do you want to stick around for the signing we're doing with the next meeting?
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Okay, that's it. Great day. Yeah.
In effect, you're materially advancing the business of the board by setting your agenda for the
No,
next
we're
meeting.
scheduling our next meeting date.
Scheduling, okay, sorry.
Date.
I heard setting.
No, just the date.
Thank you.